Hey, welcome to Five Tool. Thank you so much for joining us once again. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Thank you for allowing me to take a week off and spend some time with my family and travel back to my hometown in Indiana. Great trip. Had some trouble with the weather getting back home, but hey, we're back now, and I'm excited to be with you again. For those of you who might be joining us for the first time, my name is Jason, and I absolutely love having the opportunity to be a real small part of your growth and your progression and your journey with God. So thank you for letting me be a part of your story. It's exciting. I'm loving this. I'm having a blast doing it. And thank you for joining us. Today, I want to start something that is going to be a little bit new for Five Tool. And the month of December here, I'm going to basically put a package of lessons together for us, of a series of teaching, if you will, talking about an element of life and of our growth I think we just don't focus enough on. And for athletes, for coaches, for parents, I think we get so busy doing so many things and improving so many areas of our life that this is one area we tend to overlook. And I'm going to be honest with you, even as a pastor, as the man of God, if you will, right? Like I try. I feel like I'm doing okay. But this is an area that I need to step up my game in. So hear me say this. I'm teaching you about something that I am in the midst of myself. I'm trying to grow in these areas. I'm trying to learn in these areas. But the topic is simply this. How do we stay connected to God? It's that simple. That's what I want to figure out. And I want to tie it to this idea of this. When you think about Christmas, what do you think about? When you think about Christmas, what do you think about? Here's for me. I think about Christmas music. I love Elvis. And when the seasons start leaning toward Christmas, you can bet I'm going to be listening to some Elvis music. I love Christmas movies. Not like the sappy chick flick ones, but I love Christmas Vacation. I love Home Alone. I love Elf. Those are hilarious movies. I love Die Hard, if you consider that a Christmas movie. I love those movies. I love making Christmas desserts with my daughter. I love getting family together around a Christmas tree on Christmas morning. But my favorite part of Christmas, and this is just me, I love making my Christmas list. I love trying to figure out what I'm going to get my wife for Christmas. I love trying to figure out what I'm going to get my kids, my son and my daughter for Christmas. But before I figure that out, I've got to go through a process. And that process all starts with this question. What do they want? What do they need? So, in mid-November or so, as Thanksgiving is approaching, I start really paying attention. And I start cueing in on their conversations and just the random talks that we have. And if my daughter drops a hint that she needs something for her baking or she has a toy she's been keeping an eye on, I make a middle note of that and then I write it down. And my son, if he says, hey, this is something I could really use for baseball this year or basketball or whatever, I write that down. This is a shirt he's been wanting or he needs a new coat, whatever the case is. I take note of those things. My wife, what is she saying that she needs that normally I wouldn't even catch? But for some reason when Christmas comes along, I pay a little bit more attention because I'm making my Christmas list. Now, you need to understand, one of my top love languages is gifts. I love to give gifts. It's well within my personality. I love to be generous. I love to help. I love to provide. I love to help make people happy. I love that. I love to add value to people. And I think one of the ways I do that is by giving gifts. It's just me. I'm not saying you have to be there. But that line of thinking really got me in this mode of trying to flip this whole idea. Where if we think of Christmas, what if we didn't focus on what your family needs or what you even need, but we said, hey, what does God want? What does God need from us for Christmas? Now, I could do a huge, theological discussion here on the fact that God really doesn't need anything. And that would be true. He doesn't need anything from you. But what does he want? What does he desire from you? And I think the answer is so much more simple than we actually think it is. It's all throughout Scripture. But I think we overlook it because we want it to be something super grand, and we want it to be a spectacle that God desires something fancy from us. And in reality, it's so simple that we miss it. You see, I think if you were to look God in the eye and say, God, what do you want from me for Christmas? What do you desire from me, from my life, to give to you this Christmas? God, what's on your Christmas list? And I think God would look at you humbly and say, hey, don't worry about making a list. We don't need a list. There's only one thing on it. I just want you to connect to me. Now, when you look at these words, connect, to be connected to, it's very similar to a Greek phrase that is used that we translate to be devoted to. To be connected and to be devoted are very similar in biblical times, in the Greek language. They're very, very common. And if you want to make a very simple definition of what these words mean, of what these phrases, these actions mean, it's this: to love, to be loyal to, or to be enthusiastic about someone or something. To love, to be loyal to, or to be enthusiastic about someone or something. What are you devoted to? Is it God? A tougher question. Are there things that you are more devoted to than God? That's a tough question, isn't it? It's convicting. Listen, I told you I'm struggling with this. I'm learning. I'm growing with this. If you're anything like me, in our sports world, there are things that you're devoted to. If you're a parent, you're devoted to your kids' sports. You're devoted to their teams. You're devoted to their continued development. If you're an athlete, you're devoted to your development. You're devoted to your teams. If you're a coach, you're devoted to learning and to teaching the game, to leading your players, your athletes. Maybe you're just a fan and you're devoted to a team. You can see over my shoulder right there. That is my Notre Dame banner. Since I was a little kid growing up in Indiana, I have followed Notre Dame football. I love the gold helmets. I love when they break out the old school vintage gold, yellow, ugly looking uniforms, but I love them. I love when they have the Shamrock Series games and they have the new modern looking uniforms. This year they played at Yankee Stadium and had the Yankee pinstripes. I loved it. I go nuts. I love it. And any Saturday that I am available, you are going to find me watching Notre Dame football. Now, what's interesting is I have passed that devotion, I have passed that connection on to my son. Now he loves Notre Dame football. But am I in love with God the same way I am in love with Notre Dame football? Am I as loyal to God as I am Notre Dame football? Listen, I've been through some rough years with Notre Dame football. I've been through some great years with Notre Dame football where they still disappointed me. I'm loyal. I'm not a bandwagon fan with Notre Dame football. I love my Notre Dame football. I'm loyal to them. I'm enthusiastic about them. It gets me excited when Notre Dame starts playing ball. But am I that enthusiastic about God? Are you? Is there anything in your life that you are more connected to or more devoted to than God? I think that's all he wants for Christmas, is just to be connected. To have you be connected, to have you be devoted to him. Now, I work with people every day. And in my line of work, when you meet with people on an individual level, most of the time, it's because they're struggling. And your job as a pastor, my job as a pastor, is to be the role, to be a voice, to be a leader, to be a person of influence that helps them navigate through that struggle. And listen, I've been doing this for 17 years, you guys. Since I was 22 years old, I have been helping people through struggles. And in those years, what I'm finding is the root of most of our struggles, if not all of our struggles, have to do with being disconnected from God. If we could figure out how to be more connected, I really think a lot of our struggles would just work themselves out. I really do. Now, it seems way too simple. I get it. But listen, I've tried to make my life harder, and it doesn't work well. When I strip away all of that hard, complicated stuff and just do well the simple things, that's when I have momentum in my life. Now, what does this have to do with Christmas? Outside of the fact that I think that that's really all God would want, how does this connect to Christmas? And listen, I'm not going to come on here every week and give you the Christmas story. That's not what I'm going to do this year. We may do that one year, but not this year. I think the best gift I could give you, our 5-tool family, is to equip you to connect with God. Because if you're anything like me, it's your struggle too. And if you're honest with yourself, some of you would say you don't know how to. No one has ever taken the time to equip you how to connect and how to stay connected to God. So you find yourself in seasons where you drift. You find yourselves in seasons where you feel far away from God and you don't even know why. It's because you don't know how to connect and stay connected. And that's what I want to do for you this month. But interestingly enough, when we look at the Christmas story, you see hints of this early on. Take a look at this. In John 1, John is a storyteller. I love the way he writes and he makes everything about Jesus personal to you. Listen to what he says when he's describing Jesus' birth. You see, some of the other Luke and some of the other Gospels, they talk about the historical account of Jesus' birth, the details of it. John says, hold on. We know Jesus was born. I want to tell you why. I want to flesh out this why, the bigger reason that he was born. And this is what he says in John 1, verse 14. Take a look at this. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, there's some really churchy words in there, right? The Word, God's Word, became flesh. And he made his dwelling among us. Literally means he came and camped out with you and me. That's what it means. And then that next part just blows my mind away. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. You see, here's, if I'm being honest, I'm full of truth. I'm a coach. I'm a pastor. I deal with people every single day that need me to tell them what to do. And it's easy for me because I lean heavily toward truth. I struggle sometimes showing grace. But Jesus, you see, Jesus put on flesh. And he was born full of both, full of grace and truth. Not a balance of, he was full of grace and truth. And when I read this verse, John 1:14, this is what I wrote in my journal. Again, I'm taking this journey with you. This is what I wrote. He who is nothing like us became like us, came to us, to be connected to us. All through a baby boy named Jesus. Now, if that doesn't tell you how much God wants to be connected to you, you're not reading the right story. That God would take on the form of me and you, that he would literally become flesh, he would leave heaven, come to earth, enter your world. God, who was nothing like you or I could ever be, chose to become like you and me, chose to come to you and me, all so that we could connect with him. You see, maybe this whole Christmas story is really about that. Connecting to God. And what I love about John is at the end of his book, at the end of his gospel, in John 20, he writes this. But these are written, meaning these words are written, so that you may believe. Everything I've written, everything I've shared here is so that you will believe. Well, John, what do you want us to believe? He says, I want you to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. And that by believing, you may have life in his name. Guys, that really is Christmas in a nutshell. You want me to summarize Christmas for you? It's simply this. God sent Jesus, God in the flesh. He became us. He came to us to connect with you, all so that you would believe in him. Because when you believe in him, you have life in him. You have life through him. You have life because of him. That's Christmas. That is why I so badly want to help you and equip you to connect and stay connected to God. Now, all month long, I'm gonna take some different approaches and different ways that you can connect with God. We're going to talk about how to read the Bible. We're going to talk about how to pray. We're going to talk about your lifestyle. We're going to talk about the people that you connect with. We're going to attack this from a lot of different angles, but real quickly as we wrap up, I want to introduce some obstacles, some things that are going to stand in your way, and I want you to be aware of them as we start learning about connecting with God. And the first obstacle I want to share with you is simply the chaos of life. Many of you, your life is very similar to mine. We personally are on an off season from baseball right now, but our boy is playing basketball for school, and our daughter's playing basketball for rec. It's nuts. It's crazy, chaotic, it's busy. And listen, every single day, you've got 24 hours. That's it. We're never going to wake up one day and have 25. You've only got 24 hours. How can you possibly fit more in? And here's what I'm going to say. I will never ask you to fit anything in. I'm not going to ask you to shove anything more in than you already have. I'm going to ask you to rearrange. I'm going to ask you to make things priority. Because life is chaos. It just is. And if connecting to God isn't a priority, you won't. Because other things will always be more important. Other things will always seem more urgent. Because life is crazy. Another obstacle is just the seasons of life. You'll go through seasons where you feel like you have tremendous momentum, you're on a spiritual high, and you're connected. But then you have seasons where you're low. And instead of feeling connected, you start wondering where God is. And listen, God didn't move. Or what about the obstacle of circumstance? Where everything in life seems to just be hitting at you from all sides. It's one struggle after another. And in those circumstances, you find it really difficult to connect to God. If God loved you, why would you be going through this? You have those kind of questions. God, are you really here? God, do you care? and your connection is based on your circumstance, you got to be careful. Got to be careful. Or some of us just have bad habits. Our habits have created a life where we don't have connection with God as a part of those habits. Or some of us just have bad environments. We live in places or we work in places where it just doesn't seem conducive to connect to God. And then another obstacle is the reality is some of us just don't have experience. Some of us have never been equipped. We've never learned how to truly connect with God. And I hope over the next month, if you'll join me, if you'll stay with me for 4 or 5 weeks here in December, I hope that together we can figure out how to connect with God and how to stay connected to God. Because I truly think that is all He wants for Christmas. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next week. God bless you, 5 Tool.